Good evening to all. Today we'll discuss testing and evaluation of geogrids testing. You might be knowing the different kind of geogrids are there, like uniaxial, biaxial, triaxial. So let us start with the sampling part. When we received any lot or sample, large size sample from the site, so we should keep in mind that we should cut the samples for testing in the laboratory. Like that, it should be representative of the whole sample, large size sample received in the laboratory. So like S1, S2, S3, S4, S5, and S6 represent at different places. And we have to keep in mind that we should leave 8 inches from both ends, and then we have to select our samples like that. It should be representative of whole lot. Now we have to keep in mind that whichever code is desired for testing, we should follow those conditions for the testing of geogrids or any kind of geosynthetics. Like a laboratory environmental condition should be maintained for that as per the relevant code. Then laboratory cleanliness, sometimes it is also required for particular kind of test. Then sampling procedure, I have already discussed, and some specialized laboratory equipment with the required rate of strain, competency, and all that, with the proper calibration of the equipments. Now, these are the main tests which we are going to discuss today for the geogrid or geostrap. This comes under the mechanical properties of the testing. First, we'll discuss tensile strength and elongation, then pull-out test, then modified diet shear test, then installation damage test. Installation damage test is basically field test. It's not a laboratory test. This is the actual photograph of universal testing machine in our laboratory with proper jaws and all that. Now, for the tensile strip can be conducted as per test procedure IS 16474 or ASTM D6637. The main object of this test to determine the tensile strength properties of geogrids. This can be done by single strip method or multiple rib method. Now, the minimum number of specimens required for both tests are 6 in both direction, in machine direction as well as cross machine direction. For this, we have to cut our sample of 200 mm width, having 5 ribs in case of multi-ribs, or in case of single rib, we have to have 1 ribs. Then we should keep in mind that at least 3 junctions should be covered or 2 apertures in the test sample, like it is shown in this figure. Like this. This is a single rib test method. Sample is there on the left side. On the right side is a multi-rib. We have taken 3 to 7 ribs, and here we have to cut both the side ribs in this manner only, as this is as per code. We have to cut at 2 places, and this is a single rib method, sampling of the single rib method for the tensile strength test. On the right side is a multi-rib tensile strength method. So single rib method is described in the code as method A, and multi-rib tensile strength method is called method B. Now, we have to cut the specimen as per the size mentioned in the code. This is the universal testing machine we have already discussed in the last lecture. Now, there are 2 types of conditioning, dry conditioning and wet conditioning for tensile strength test, either multi-strip or single strip method. The dry sample should have a moisture equilibrium at temperature requirement is 21 plus minus 2, as well as humidity requirement is 65 plus minus 5% as per ASTM. While as per Indian standard, the temperature requirements changes to 27 plus minus 2, humidity requirement remains same. So we have to keep our specimen dry sample under this condition till our moisture comes in the equilibrium up to 0.01%. When we'll check the moisture, the variation should not be more than 0.01%. Second conditioning is wet sample. This is the worst conditioning of the sample. In this, we have to immerse our sample in water at 21 plus minus 2 degrees centigrade minimum for 1 hour. And then we have to check its weight, and the moisture equilibrium comes. Then we have to keep out the sample and put in the universal testing machine. These are the photographs we have already discussed, like single lip tensile method and multi-lip tensile method. This is another photograph of geostrap. This is the video extensometer, which is used to measure the strain, like elongation, during the tensile test. It is manufactured in-house in our laboratory, having a camera as well as some LED lights, and we have to, like this, we have to put these two marks on the gauge length, and as the tensile test under progress, these marks will elongate, and this elongation will be measured by the video extensometer. How it will be measured? It will be measured by the pixel distance measurements between the markers, and it is captured, these images, constantly in the captured video while the specimen is under the test. Because under the tensile strength, this sample being stressed or compressed, so all the pixel distances are being measured by this camera under the real time and mapping against a calibrated value to give a direct strain measurement. This is a very accurate procedure of measuring the elongation. Now, the procedure for tensile testing is that we have to maintain the distance between the clamps as 200 plus minus 3 mm. Then we have to set our machine at a strain rate of 10% plus minus 3% of the gauge length per minute, as per IS and ASTM both. Then specimen is centrally mounted in the clamps or roller grips, depending upon the type of sampling. The roller grips in our case is of 80 mm dia, as shown in our figure. Then specimen length in the machine direction and cross machine direction must be parallel to the direction of the application of forces, like this. Like this is the sample, and the vertical direction is the parallel of the direction of the tensile force applied on this sample. Now tensile test is continued, and then till the breaking force comes into picture, then we have to note down that breaking force. It is shown in this figure. See, this is data acquisition system. Here, as soon as we have tensile strength is progress, the load increases as well as elongation increases on the x-axis, and y-axis there is a load. So this kind of actual curve we received from the data acquisition system. And then this is the breaking point at which the maximum tensile force is taken, noted down. This is called breaking load. And corresponding elongation is measured through that video camera. Now, as per IS and ASTM, this is the formula for calculation of tensile strength. FF minus TO oblique NR into NT. FF is the breaking force observed during the testing. Then TO is the slack tensile load. What is this? I will explain you in the actual. Like in CBR test, when initial seating pressure we have to apply, there is some, when we are putting a tangent kind of thing on the straight portion. So when it comes to the straight portion, so according to that, at this point, when taking a point on the y-axis, that is the load. So this load is the slacking load. So if you are not putting a proper seating load, then this kind of slacking load is coming into picture. So we have to note down this slacking load if it is there. If it is not there, then it is no problem. Then TO will be 0. TO is slack tensile load in Newton. If it is there, then we have to subtract from the breaking force what we observed during testing. NR is the minimum number of tensile elements in a 1 meter width of the geogrid samples. Actually, normally what we observe 30 number of tensile elements in our samples is there, suppose in 1 meter width, then NT will be 30. And what is NR? NR means number of tensile elements within test sample. It may be single strips, it may be multi strips. So in case of multi strip, it will be 5 or 7, whatever the situation in our case. So with this formula, we can calculate the tensile strength in Newton per meter. But we have to keep in mind that in case of single strip tensile strength method, the reporting value is always in Newton because we are not dividing with the number of strips because there is only one strip is there. While in case of multi-rip, we have to divide with the, suppose we have taken the 7 strips here, 7 rips are there. So all 7 rips are contributing in taking load. Here only 1 rip is taking the load. So in method A, the reporting of the tensile strength is always in kilonewton or Newton. While in method B, it should be kilonewton per meter. Means whatever total breaking force or tensile strength is coming, it should be divided by the total number of rips in 1 meter width of the geogrid sample. So this is very important point to keep in mind while reporting the results in both the procedure. This is the elongation formula, delta L, change in length divided by original length. This is the normal formula of elongation, but here through video camera, we can directly calculate the elongation. Now, the reporting part, as I have told you, the average value of tensile strength, like in this case, the minimum number of samples are 6. So we have to calculate the average values of the 6 tensile strength values received from different samples. And elongation, as per the relevant code, we have to mention in the test reports. These are the photograph of before test and after breaking the sample. These are the actual photographs done in our laboratory. See, in this data equation, there is the actual load 3.4335 Newton and elongation comes 130. But this elongation is not the correct one. So that's why we have to take the another value of the elongation from the video camera. The software is defining that value also. Now another test, next test is pull-out test resistance in soil. There is 2 codes as per IS 16380 and as per ASTM it is 6706. So the main aim, pull-out test, actually when we are using geogrids in the field, so we should know how much resistance of a geosynthetics comes into picture when using in different kind of strata. It may be soil, it may be coarse grained soil, it may be coarse grained material like gravelly strata. So all the strata will giving the different values of resistance. So to check that resistance in the laboratory, this test is being performed. The principle of this test, I will show you the photograph of this equipment. It's very large equipment. You see, this is the loading platform where we are giving a normal stresses. This is the plate for the compaction purposes. And then it can be moved from to and fro over the tank. The tank size is 1 meter by 1 meter in the plan and length is 1.5 meter. And under this, up to 1500 mm from the, we have to 500 mm, we have to put the soil at the desired compaction 97%. We'll discuss the procedure in next slides. The principle of this test is geosynthetics is embedded between 2 layers of media, maybe fine soil, maybe coarse soil or coarse grain aggregates. And then a force is applied vertically over this system and a horizontal pull force is also applied on the geosynthetics. And now we have to check to record the maximum pull-out resistance as well as under the applied normal stress, different normal stresses, and we have to obtain the number of test results by doing this, and then we can calculate the resistance, pull-out resistance in the different conditions under different normal stresses. This is the sketch diagram showing different kind of component of this test equipment. Like in the bottom, we have to put our soil, then geosynthetic, maybe geogrid, maybe geotextile, geostrap. Then over that, we are putting another similar strata of soil, similar quality. And then either you can put the airbag or steel plate for uniform loading. And then on vertical, normal stress is applied over this. This picture shows how we have to select the filling material and what kind of testing is required before selecting any fill. So in this is the geogrid which we have to use in our testing for pull-out test, having 150 kilonewton per meter strength. Then we have to compact our soil. Before compaction, we have to check the CN5 shear strength parameter of this soil which are going to use, and then this is being core cutter test is being performed for the checking the in situ density after the upper compaction, whether it is compacted up to the desired level or not, which is 97% of the OMC MDD. So all these tests shows how we have to prepare the compaction as well as soil bottom portion of the strata in the tank. In this test, the number of specimens are minimum 3, means we have to perform 3 tests on 3 specimens, considering 3 different normal stresses. The size of sample minimum should be 305 mm wide, and it should be double the width of the, means 610 mm long. The conditioning of the test specimen should be prior to use in the tank. We have to condition our sample as per ASTM and as per IS, depending upon the temperature and humidity requirements. We have to keep our test specimen under this condition in the room, and then after getting the moisture equilibrium, we have to put this sample in the tank. Now, we have to, after applying different normal stresses like 25 kPa, 50 kPa, and 100 kPa, and we have to check the pull-out resistance also correspondingly, and then we have to note down these values, and then we have to determine the normal stresses. Sigma n is the sum of the sigma s plus sigma a. What is sigma s? Sigma s is the total normal stress applied due to soil or gravel, whatever the strata we are going to use in the test, above the geosynthetic in kPa. Then sigma a is the normal stresses due to applied normal stress after subtracting the weight of the top 25 mm thick plate, steel plate. We have to subtract that load because it's already added in the normal stress applied. Then after adding these two, we got the sigma n value, and then we have to calculate the pull-out resistance by the formula. PR is pull-out resistance, by FP is pull-out force divided by WG for geotextile and geomembranes. Another, for geogrid case, the value of calculation of pull-out resistance comes into picture like NG. What is NG? NG is our number of ribs, because in geogrids there are ribs. In geostraps, on geotextile and geomembrane, there is no kind of, the structure is different. So that's why the formula for both the cases are different. The first formula is used for plain kind of material like geotextile, geomembrane, or geostrap. And if grids are there, then the second formula is being used, FP into NG upon NG. What is NG? NG is the number of ribs in the specimen in the direction of pull-out force, and WG is width of the geosynthetics. Like sample of geosynthetics 305 centimeter, so that is WG. Now coefficient of interaction is determined using this equation. CI is coefficient of interaction, PR is pull-out resistance divided by C. C is the effective unit parameter, means two faces of the soil, so it is always 2. So PR is pull-out resistance, and then LE is the length of the specimen embedded in the tank. Sigma n is the normal stresses, and phi is the residual soil strength parameter obtained from direct shear test. These are the different photographs. Top one shows the outer part of the geogrid from the tank. Means we have to keep it in the roller like this. When horizontal pull-out force is coming through these ends, so it extend the geogrids in the horizontal direction. So we have to observe the kind of failure, whether it is coming through pulling out the geogrid sample or some damage kind of things are there. So normally what we observe, it is normally pull out kind of failure. It is not a damage the ribs. Like this left side photograph shows the before test after the compaction of the bottom portion of the soil strata and then putting a geogrid, and now after again compacting the soil over it. The right side is the photograph of after test. You see there is no damage of the any kind of ribs. So this is a simple failure of pull out. How we will determine the failure, we will discuss in the next slide. When our sample is coming out for more than 25 mm, then till that we have to apply the forces. And as soon as our sample pull out more than 25 mm, then we have to stop the test at this location. Either this condition we have to follow or any damage in the rib is observed, then we have to stop the test at the point. So that is the failure criteria in case of pull-out test. This is the final observation sheets of the actual test conducted in our laboratory. The loading normal stress are applied on 3 different specimens are 25 kPa, then 50 kPa, then 100 kPa. And number of ribs were in 1 meter, width of the geogrid sample was 32. And number of ribs in the test specimen was 13, which the width of 305 mm sample. So under that, only 13 mm ribs were there. LE is the length of the embedment. It was prescribed by the manufacturers. It was 600 mm. And then maximum pull-out force comes under different normal stresses varying 13.4 to 29.4. And then what is the maximum pull-out resistance we observed? Under 25 to 100, it increases from 32.98 to 72.37 kN per meter. Then coefficient of interaction comes as per the calculation. In the lower stress, normal stress is 25 kPa, it comes 1.9, higher value. As soon as when we increase our normal stress up to 100, the CI will decrease to 1.04. So this kind of trend we normally observe. If you increase the normal stress, the coefficient of interaction decreases. The mode of failure in all the cases was pull out. There was no damage of any kind of ribs. The average value coming is 1.56. This is the comparison with 3 different kind of fill material like silty sand, fly ash, and coarser sand. So the normal stress remains same. The grade of geogrid was 150 kilonewton per meter. Then stresses were 25, 50, and 100. Pull-out resistance was increasing as the normal stress increases. COI, coefficient of interaction, was decreasing as the stresses increases. Pull-out resistance is increasing. The trend is same. But now see, silty sand has phi value of 30 degree. Fly ash has phi value of 32 degree. Sand has phi value of 34 degree. When phi value increases under the same stresses, the COI normally decreases. Like in under 50 kilonewton, you see in the phi, when lower phi, it is getting 1.74 value. And when phi is increasing, then in the case of fly ash, there is some different kind of trend is observed, while silty sand and coarse sand, it is decreasing trend is observed. These are the typical relationship we normally draw between pull-out force versus displacement and maximum pull-out distance versus normal stresses. Now the another test we'll discuss like interface friction evolution between geosynthetics and soil by using modified direct shear test. That is the large size modified direct shear. As you know that in the case of fine grained soil, we are using small 30 centimeter by 30 centimeter mold size direct shear test. But here the 7 centimeter by 7, but here we are getting larger mold of 30 centimeter by 30 centimeter. The test procedure is followed by different methods like IS and ASTM and ISO. Again, the object is same, the determination of coefficient of interface friction between a soil and geosynthetics. Like here, in place of soil, we can use aggregate and ballast also. And soil versus soil interface, we can use soil versus geosynthetic interface. Like both kind of testing can be performed in this equipment. Here we will discuss today the determination of coefficient of interface friction between soil as well as geosynthetics. Like in today's, we will discuss geogrid. Sampling, like this is our equipment, actual photograph of large size equipment having 30 centimeter by 30 centimeter box. Here, this upper and lower half are being sheared horizontally, and the lower side, we are putting a kind of wooden plank, wooden pieces there, over which we have to put our geogrid this way. And then again, we have to fill, we have to keep in our this container, and then we have to fill the soil, desired soil, whatever be it, and then we have to shear it. So this is the photograph before test, this is the after test. We find no damage in the ribs of the geogrids. So now this is the procedure how we have to fit the specimen in the bottom spacer of the top of the wooden spacer, and then we have to keep in the direct shear box lower half portion, then fill the soil, compact it at the desired moisture density like 97% of the OMC MDD. Then we have to shear the box, and the normal stresses are applying different normal stresses like starting from 50 kPa to 200 kPa at three different stresses. This can be from 50 to 200 or maybe 100, 200, 300, whatever be a normal stress as per the requirement, we can change it. Now the shear strength should be applied between 6.35 mm per minute to 0.025 mm per minute, depending upon the field requirements or customers' requirements. Now shearing, after shearing is continued until the shearing load is constant or displacement of 60 mm is reached, whichever is earlier. So after completion of test, we have to dismantle the apparatus and geosynthetic condition is observed. It was found okay. There was no damage in the geogrid, and test is repeated for all the three normal stress levels. Now, this is the calculation part. Apparent shear stress is calculated by this formula Fs minus Fc upon AC. And AC is the corrected area. It can be calculated by AO minus D into W. What is D and W? You just check it. AO is the initial specimen contact area, and then we have to apply the correction, like how much horizontal displacement of the traveling container is there. It is measured in terms of D, and W is the specimen contact width. So at each level, we have to check the corrected area, and there is a FC value is very important. It should be checked before the performing the test. Like without using your sample, you have to shear both the portion of the upper and lower, and then you have to check what is the FC value. Then you have to deduct from the actual shear force. So that's why the formula is Fs minus Fc upon AC. So by this formula, we can calculate the apparent shear stress. And then coefficient of direct sliding can be calculated by using tan delta upon tan phi. Tan delta is the interface friction angle, and phi is the friction angle obtained from the direct shear test. So by this formula, we can calculate the coefficient of direct sliding. Like in this table, we have a different normal stresses from 50 to 200 kPa. Then our width of direct shear box is 30 centimeter only. And shear stress applied under different normal stresses obtained are different, 36 to 118 kilonewton per meter square. The interface friction angle is obtained at 28 degree, and friction angle obtained for soil is 30 degree. So dividing tangent of these two, we got the value of 0.92 as a coefficient of direct sliding. For different kind of strata, this is the comparison of CDS value for grade 150 kilonewton per meter square geograde. It varies from 0.92 to 0.86. Means if the phi value of the strata is increasing, if your fill, if phi value is more, the CDS value will be less. Because you see, the tangent phi is inversely proportional to CDS. That's why this trend is observing. These are the graphs which we obtain during the test, like between shear force and displacement at the horizontal. And this is the peak load, failure load, which we have to note down. And then it reduces and becomes constant at the larger displacement. Then another graph is obtained between shear stress versus normal stress to obtain a phi value, delta value for the geogrid. The last field test is installation damage test, which we can determine for the purpose, like when you are using our geogrids in the field installation, it should not be damaged while using during compaction or by using with the different kind of gravelly strata. So to how much damage or can be sustained by a geogrids during installation, we can check through this test. So the apparatus used is nothing, only a simple ground is required, and soil vibrator is used for the compaction purpose. JCB machine is being used for the holding the sample and all that, and UTM machine used to test the sample, tensile strength of the samples before and after the installation damage. Like this. These are the photographs. Like in the first, there is a bay of 3.5 meter by 3.5. There are three different bays which we are using, 1, 2, and 3. And we have to compact different kind of fill, maybe fine sand, coarse sand, then gravelly strata. And after compacting it with the vibratory roller, we have to check the in situ density as per the requirement. Then we lay our control samples, which has been tested already in the UTM machine before laying the tensile strength being tested for these same geogrids. Then again, we have to fill it over it. So cross section is like this only. This is the one bay of 3.5 by 3.5 meter, just shown a sketch diagram. Our geogrid is laid in the machine direction, and perpendicular to this is the direction of rolling of the vibratory roller. Then this is the section in the bottom portion. The preparatory fill layer should be compacted of 150 mm thick. Then we have to put our geogrid. Then again finishing layer of 150 mm compacted. This is the cross section of the this bay. Then we have to level our sites in the 3.5 by 3.5 meter. Then it loose 200 mm thick soil is laid below the geogrid, then compacted up to 150 mm, then put a geogrid over that. And again, we have to lay another 200 mm thick layer and compacted in different layers. And then we have to arrange our reinforcement in between of size 3.5 by 3.5 meter. And we have to keep in mind that there should be no tension in the while laying the reinforcement over the soil. And then we should take care that we should not allow any damage while rolling our soil over the reinforcement. So that's why sufficient unused reinforcement from this batch should be retained and prepared for tensile testing as a control sample. So after rolling it for a particular rolls means number of rolling should be done, and then we have to exhume our samples from these and we have to test in the UTM in the laboratory. So what is the loss in strength prior to the installation and after the installation? So that ratio gives your installation damage factor, RID. Just I will show you how. So see, on the left side, this is a tensile strength of control sample before laying in the installation bay. Then this is the exhume sample. Exhume means after rolling number of passes, we have to exhume our samples manually or with some mechanical system. Then we have to check it in the laboratory how much difference in the tensile strength that ratio gives you installation damage. Like this is the formula. Partial factor safety for installation damage, RFID, is defined as the average ultimate strength from the control sample divided by the average ultimate strength from the installation damage samples. Like whatever the difference ratio of tensile strength gives you the RFID value. In our case, as per the actual test performed in our laboratory or in the field, these are the different kind of strata which we use for the installation damage of geogrid, like fine-grained soil, medium-grained soil, and coarse-grained soil. The tensile strength tested in the control sample in the laboratory before installation was 160 kilonewton per meter. Then after the application of rollers and rolling, an exhumed sample, the tensile strength test was performed, and it was observed that with the fine-grained soil, it was coming against 160, it was coming 146 kilonewton per meter. With the medium-grained soil, it was slightly lesser of 144 kilonewton per meter. But with the coarse-grained soil, the damage was high, so strength was further reduced to 96 kilonewton per meter. So ultimately, the reduction factor was highest in the case of coarse-grained soil. It was 1.67. It was lowest in the case of fine-grained soil of 1.09. So as your size of the sample increases, the damage increases. So it clearly indicates the variation of reduction factor from 1.09 to 1.67. So this way we can confirm that while putting our sample in the field, we should keep in mind that this kind of damage may occur. So while designing, we consider this damage factor in the case of design, depending upon the type of backfill material being used. This is the plot which we normally do for the installation damage reduction factor on the y-axis, and different kind of soil which we use, like fine-grained soil, medium-grained soil, and coarse-grained soil. So this is the graphical representation of the values which we observed, 1.09 to 0.97. Similarly, another relationship we plot between tensile strength as well as sample condition in the exhumed sample on the fine-grained to the coarse-grained soils. The first one is the controlled one, having 160 kilonewton per meter strength, while having reducing to different strength. So this way we can represent our values also. So this was all the tests normally performed on the geogrids.
Thank you, Anil. First of all, though he is not shown, you remember in my class I mentioned to you that we got two different kind of grips, is it not?
Yes, sir.
One was kind of parallel jaws. Other was a roller grip, is it not?
Yes, sir.
Now, can't we assemble this specimen in that parallel jaws actually? That's called pressure grip now. Like parallel plates now, the hydraulic system will actually apply pressure from both sides, gripping the geosynthetic now. Now, should we use that or should we use roller? Why did he go to roller grip actually, suddenly? Why he didn't pick up the pressure grips? Very easy, you know? The second advantage in a pressure grip was that, the gauge length is going to be 100 millimeters. The width is 200 millimeters, slightly more or less. And then the gauge length actually, that means between the grips, it is going to be 100 millimeters. So that is easy, is it not, to assemble this specimen in a pressure grip is more easy than assembling in a roller grip. Now, why did he choose this actually? So we got this flexible material now. It could be a geotextile, woven or non-woven. It could be this woven grids or flexible grids. And we got the rigid grids also. The tensor kind of rigid grids, HDPE and PP. So for those rigid grids, geogrids, naturally we can use this parallel plate arrangement. Okay, but there also I think I've shown you there's a slot below and pressure supply to be perfectly done. Otherwise it may damage near the edge of the grip itself. So here, if you are going to apply, after all, these are polyester kind of grids now, is it not? So when you are putting this in a parallel plate kind of device now, pressure grip now, it will get crushed. You want to, otherwise it will slip now. Two things are going to happen now. So for this geotextile and for this kind of flexible grips now, it is necessary for us to put a roller grip now. We assemble the sample and roller grip actually. The advantage of roller grip is that the more you tighten, that means more tension being applied, it is almost automatically going to be stronger. I mean, the grip is going to hold it much more strongly. I think last time I showed you that how to assemble that also. Is it not? The point we are trying to make is now, I think he mentioned this very clearly, that if you are looking at a horizontal, you can say rib actually, it should be perfectly parallel to the roller. Agar suppose chada hai, let us say, then we are not going to have a straight tension. I mean, it's very easy to say that we are going to apply tension. It should be pure tension. Okay, it can't be torsion. And we have to assemble in such a way. That's why I have shown you the specimen after testing. He has compared both them now. So after testing, what happened now? The entire sample has failed. It's not that part of it has failed. That means it is held uniformly both at the top roller and also at the bottom roller. Isn't it? So assembling itself is a matter of skill, I should say that. And if you are unskilled now, the result will show you. The result will show you. That is why we are going to test 6 specimens at least. Isn't it? I have mentioned how to do this, MAR value, all the things are mentioned earlier. So the first and important thing is that they should be, I should say normal, the vertical ribs should be normal to the grip. That's okay. Then he has also mentioned clearly single rib and multi-rib now. Now for a geotextile, what he said last time, he said we are going to have a 200 millimeter wide width tensile strength, that's 200 millimeter width, and then 100 millimeter gauge length. Is it not? Remember, I also mentioned to you last time that when you're taking a woven geotextile specimen, what we are going to do, we are not going to take 200 millimeters, we are going to take 210 millimeters or more than 200 millimeters. Assemble it exactly such that the same yarn is going to continue from top to bottom exactly vertically. Okay, so then you can quickly mark at the center 200 millimeters. The extra yarns we are going to cut off actually. So same yarns are cut off from top to bottom. At the top also, top grip also, bottom grip also, we are going to cut off. So that exactly 200 millimeters is going to be there perfectly. So even in woven geotextile also, it's going to be impossible to us get exactly 200 millimeters because it depends on the yarn spacing and so many things are there. So it will be slightly lower than 200 or slightly higher than 200 because we want the same yarns to go from top to bottom. So we have to make a correction. In the case of non-woven geotextile, we can exactly cut it. There is no question of linkage like this. Exactly, we can have whatever length we require. I think we require 300 or 400 millimeters, 100 in the grip here at the bottom, 100 extra grip there. Sorry, 300. 100 gauge length, 100 in top grip, 100 is the bottom grip now. So, and width also 200 millimeters. So that is very clear now, non-woven cut. Now coming back to this, the geogrid now. So the ASTM has given us 2 methods. One, of course, he's given you detail of a single rib and multi-rib now. Now, why we are doing both of them actually? Now, for example, I want to test a very strong geogrid. Let's say 1000 kilonewton meter strength. If you are really putting up 200 millimeter weight, we will have a lot of the ribs coming in. And then what is the capacity of the equipment required now? Our width is 200 millimeters. So if the strength is 1000, it should be 200 kilonewton per meter. 200 kilonewton is the capacity of the main machine. But we need more. This 300 kilonewton machine we require actually. We may not be able to have that kind of system. Our systems are usually 50 or 100 kilonewtons total capacity. So that is why instead of testing even the 200 millimeters, which is also representative only. You remember that we want to test actually 1 meter width. We said, okay, 200 millimeters is going to give you some reasonable value. Now we are even controlling it by saying that it could be just multi-rib. So multi-rib, we said, of course, 5 ions actually. It could have more ribs also. But if you have more ribs now, the capacity of the machine may be exceeded. That's the problem now. So with all this now, this has come now. And so we are able to convert this multi-rib into per meter width. No worry at all. Now the single rib which I are trying to do is to find out what is the actual behavior of the individual ribs basically. Now supposing we got 6 ribs now in 200 millimeters. We got one value. And individual rib we got one value. Now can you multiply the individual single rib by 6 and say that I'm going to get the strength now? Theoretically yes. But practically is it going to be correct now? Statistically, I think this point I mentioned to you earlier also. Statistically, the smaller the sample you are going to test, it will always have larger strength. The larger the specimen you are going to have, it will have all the defects actually. Defects may be of a different kind, whether rock or soil or anything else now, but the rocks is applicable also. The uniaxial compressive strength of an individual specimen is always going to be higher compared to the strength of the rock mass actually. Rock mass will have joints and fissures and so many things now. And that's not there in a small specimen actually. Same thing is going to happen here also. So the individual rib, single rib is always going to give you general high strength, but it will tell you how it is behaving actually. Okay, so we don't multiply it by that number of ribs per meter or per whatever it is now. So that is why the value is given in kilonewton only. That's why he mentioned it's going to kilonewton, single rib, and of course kilonewton per that width whatever got now converted back into kilonewton meter now. So it looks very simple calculation, but there's a lot of fundamentals associated with this now. One should remember this. Okay. So then the machine is recording also. Machine is recording not only the so-called low deformation behavior, which is correct if it's a rigid grid now with parallel grips. Is it not? So directly the computer is giving you this entire thing. We don't need a sensometer at all. So directly we take the curve and then use it. But you should also remember that we got the curve now, but also it is showing the reading of the maximum elongation. It's also giving you, not maximum elongation failure, and breaking load is going to give you also. Maximum load is going to give you. So that also is a kind of cross check where immediately we're able to see that value in front of you, because watching that testing, where testing is going to be very quick now. The curve is going to fall, but it will still give you the peak. It will record that. And then of course it will keep going down. So one has to watch what is happening, and also one has to watch also, is the specimen failing near the grips or not? That also we have to see. Or all the ribs trying to fail simultaneously or not, we have to see this. So that is why we conduct more number of tests and visually, in fact, record it sometimes for consultancy and other things. We have to record the entire test actually. Video recording is easy now, and people can get something out of it now. So that is going to be most important for us to look into this now. The other point which we have to, I think I have to ask Anil. Anil, you said the relative humidity we are talking of.
Pardon, sir?
For ASTM and for BAS now.
Yeah.
You mentioned actually two different values, 65 plus minus 2% and 65 plus minus 5%.
Yeah.
Which is correct?
65 plus minus 5%.
Plus minus 5%. So I had to correct that slide actually. And then there is a difference in temperature, huge difference in temperature now. So what is it? Can you show me the slide again?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as for ASTM now, the temperature is 21 plus or minus 2 degrees Celsius.
Yes, sir.
For Indian conditions now, that is IS test, BS test now, it is taken 27. No, this difference always there now. Because, in our country, the ambient temperature is always higher, by and large, barring the northernmost part of our country. So that is why the country, after a lot of deliberation, chosen to take the value 27. So this difference always exists between any other code and Indian code actually. Our ambient temperature is in the laboratory is going to be 27 degrees, 27 plus minus 2 degrees Celsius, but ASTM is going to 21 plus minus 2. In actual fact, the value may not be much different. I can tell you this also. But then the standard test condition is this only. So if you are recommending the value, you should say that I have maintained this temperature as per BAS, or in this case, anybody accreditation has come for ASTM, so he will maintain the 21 degrees Celsius. We can use the same equipment, by maintaining temperature at 27 degrees plus minus 2 and do that. Mind you that this whole recording has to be kept actually. That means it's not only that when you go into testing, you just switch on the AC and then say this is temperature. No, it's supposed to be maintained actually for quite some time so that there is a homogeneity in the temperature and everything else now. And that is where the conditioning is going to come. He has mentioned quite clearly, Bajala didn't follow that. What is going to happen is we have to maintain the specimen. Suppose, you get from, let's say, Jaipur, the sample. When work is going on Jaipur proper, you bring the sample to the laboratory. Now, this specimen could be at 45 degrees Celsius. If you start testing it immediately, then it's going to be giving the value at that high temperature now. So that's why you have to condition this at the laboratory temperature for that time period. What is the time period? What is the time we have to condition? Anil?
1 hour.
1 hour. So 1 hour you have to maintain the temperature so that it comes to the laboratory standard laboratory temperature. That is important. That's called conditioning now. So conditioning is going to be required for us. And he mentioned about wet also. In our country, wet or dry really doesn't matter, but it all depends on specification, as he mentioned, which specification we are going to follow. So that is something which I have to always keep in mind. So any other point you wanted to think of? Yeah, the pull-out test apparatus I have shown you, he has mentioned this also. The depth of the tank actually is 1 meter by 1 meter. Depth of the tank is 1 meter. And the width of the tank is also 1 meter, but length is 1.5 meters. Okay. Now this much depth is not required actually as per ASTM, but this particular machine is meant also for connection load. Okay, that's what it says actually. Now, what a connection load now? What is the load? I have mentioned at the end of that BS code actually that we have to find out the connection loads actually. Connection load is to be obtained as per the BS code now at each one of the top layer or bottom layer now. And we have to test this condition at the different vertical stresses are going to be there now. So for that now what we have to do? We have to, particularly this is more critical for block fascia. That means between two blocks now, we are going to place this geosynthetic and then pull it out now. The test is basically the same only. So this tank size actually enables you to place the blocks also within the tank and apply the normal stress and then do the same kind of pull out actually. Okay. So maybe when we do this some other time, now the equipment is very busy. We're unable to do this testing, but we can do this on the same machine. So it is a multiple kind of testing. And there is a unique feature also for the modified direct shear. If you recall, whatever testing we have been doing in the beginning at IIT and all, we are only doing only in the laboratory scale, that is 60 by 60 millimeter sample, but that's not correct. So we'll have to do on first of all, large shear box. So large shear box means it's going to be 300 millimeters by 300 millimeters in plant size. Okay. But now, once we are doing this now, the companies which make this equipment in the country, AMIL and HYCO, they are making the same kind of lever arm like our small direct shear box only. So the whole equipment, if you see anywhere else, actually, it is placed almost below the ground level. And then the entire occupies a lot of space actually. And placing them, we require pulleys and things like that now. So all that is simply changed into a simple setup, a nice cute looking setup actually, wherein the normal load applied by simply a jack system. That's what you see on the top now. Can I explain this feature, Anil?
Yes, sir.
Just explain how the normal stress is applied? Yeah.
Yeah, from this, there is a jack of 50 kilonewton capacity.
Full screen.
Correct.
Go to full screen. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So there is a load cell and through which we are applying normal stresses, and there is a plate over it through which we uniformly distribute our load to the sample in the 30 centimeter by 30 centimeter. There is a gap between two tank that is called water jacket. When we are performing our test between soil and soil interface media, then we have to use this water jacket. Otherwise, in case of geosynthetics, we are not going to put water in the water jacket. So there, through this U section, we are transferring our horizontal stresses to the horizontal pullout, and it's a very simple system. We have modified it accordingly, and there is a LVDT to measure the horizontal displacement. instead of that lever arm and all that system. So this is very easy to handle while performing the test. So we have a motor also. So automatically we are just applying the horizontal strain through this motor, and LVDT is measuring that strain.
Yeah.
We have
So we have
software
digital
also.
output also.
Yeah,
We have
digital
digital output
there.
also coming automatically from this.
And if we have a software also, so automatically we are getting graphs over that our laptop or computer. We can attach to this digital output.
Okay, any more doubts? Okay, thank you, Anil.
Thank you, sir. Thank
Maybe
you
if
to all.
things go well, we'll come to a laboratory at the end of
Thank
the
you, sir.
semester.
Most welcome.